Tallahassee still. We're a few miles east of the winter encampment of Hernandez DeSoto, who, as we learned earlier, landed in Tampa Bay, came up through the interior, crossed rivers, etc., and eventually wound up here in the winter of 1539/40, a few miles west of here, on a hilltop of a major Apalachee people stronghold, a major village. Of course, he ran them off, had their battles, etc. They fled. He wintered there with him and his men and followers. Apparently there were more than just the army. And after he left in early March 1540, of course, they trickled back into their village. It was about between 60 and 100 years during that course of time, between 60 and 100 years after those events, that the Spanish came gradually from St. Augustine, gradually came west. This was the farthest west and the most significant of all the missions. We're in Mission San Luis, on a hilltop. Can't really show you from this angle. Is really not. Can't really tell, but we're on a promontory. If there weren't any trees or buildings around, you could see a very long way. We're on one of the highest points in the city, and therefore one of the highest points in the state. Everything here, in 1704, the Spanish left this mission that they had spent over 100 years constructing, and burned it to the ground because the English were coming. The English, allied with the Creek out of Georgia, South Carolina, etc., were as part of Queen Anne's War. They were coming to wipe out the Spanish. So the Spanish burned everything to the ground and fled. Over the course of the next 200 years, this place was privately owned, and in the 1980s, sold by the people who built this big, huge house to the state. The state did the archaeology on it, and then reconstructed what they imagined it looked like from accounts and what the archaeology showed them back in those days. So we're going to take a look at it. And here we got our resident priest who we're converting to Protestantism, but he ain't having it. I'm trying for you, man. Do you like Moses in the Ten Commandments with this stick? There shall be no greater time. You see that movie? Yeah, lead the snakes out of Egypt or whatever. All right, over here in the distance, and our first stop is the council house. This is the most recent of the rebuilt, reconstructed buildings on this site. It was, as you can see from the person walking in, it was huge. It was the center of daily life for the Apalachee. It's just amazing. Even though this is all reconstructed, we are standing on ground that was the mission. The mission of San Luis. Trying not to shake too much here, but seems to be my propensity. And as we can see, there's a reproduction. Okay, so now we're going to go in the council house. The reproduced council house. Here we have current history major, future lawyer. Very helpful. These are all reconstructed. Oh, this lady also thinks that this is packed clay, but it's not. It's concrete. So here we have our main fire area. The hole in the roof that would have gone out. That's an enormous hole. I don't know how they would have kept Florida rains. I'm sure it would have rained, but I don't know how it would have kept that fire from being extinguished. It's a big old fire. I'm not sure, and I am sure that they've done a lot more research on it than I'll ever do, but I'm not sure that everything was as neat and symmetrical as they've portrayed it in here, or that these materials would have been used, this thick of wood and all that. I mean, that is a long ass tree. You would have really had to go to great lengths to find it. Here's a gator skull. Nice. Different bones.
Yeah, but this was more, you know, they might have different types of meetings going on here, different types of so, yeah, just people sort of coming and going. This building is really multi-purpose. It's the city hall, convention center, hotel, you know, again,
and as we learned earlier, these are just these areas, like the DeSoto encampment, this place, any of those kinds of places were quote-unquote seats of power. It's where people would have got their orders from, where they would have come to pay their respects and for any kind of ceremonial functions and things like that. It wasn't like, at one point they say that 1,400 people lived here, but that was Spanish and Apalachee. That was not just Apalachee. The Apalachee, like all Indians, lived and worked near their fields, near their traps in the rivers, wherever they were going to and from to get their daily sustenance. And of course they would have brought their tribute, their taxes, if you will, to this center of power. This is where the chief, his people would have stayed and all that sort of thing. The chief, the center of power for the Apalachee was where we saw earlier with DeSoto's encampment site. The Spanish came. There was no one here when the Spanish came. They built this place because of its strategic importance and strategic advantages, and they convinced the Apalachee chief and his, retinue to move over here, to relocate over here. So this was essentially protection for the Apalachee. The Apalachee recognized right off that that the Spanish were, powerful people. They were not, naked savages running around just living their daily sustenance. They came with full regalia, full thing, full deal, completely prepared and loaded for bear for that time frame. I mean, at that time the Spanish were the height of modern civilization. It's basically the cookhouse. This is where the person who cooked the food, grew the food, lived. As you can see, she and he and their family have lived in here. There's a little baby area. And again, we're standing in a reconstruction, all reproduced. In 17th century fashion. An outdoor kitchen. I'm not sure how well that would have gone over during rainy days. A chicken coop in the back. And of course you have to imagine that there would have been houses, chickies and houses, things of that nature all over the place throughout here. This is just the basic, give you a basic idea of what life was like back then. They would have had fields upon fields upon fields. 1,400 people was a lot of people to feed, and that's people live here. Thousands and thousands of people lived up and down the spine of this mountain area or hilly area that runs east to west. All sorts of Apalachee villages and things of that nature down by the coast, down by St. Mark's, all along that whole Apalachicola area. We've been everywhere in this vicinity. This is the Messer house. I don't know much about it. I don't not want to know about it. I just didn't know it existed until I started talking to one of the guys. But people lived here from the time this was burnt to the ground by the Spanish in 1704 until this family sold it to the state. It was occupied. It was a cotton plantation. It was, on and on and on. It was different people owned it. Okay, we're going over to the friary, which I thought was kind of cool. This is where the friars lived. Had their pens in the back and things like that nature. Church is right over here. This would have been a hub of activity. Back in the day, this would have been all the civilians that came with them, all the Europeans. They would have been all over this place. Spiritual needs were very, very important back in those days. We have an altar, and this is the friary is where these guys lived. It wasn't a church per se, but it was where they lived their lives. Now this is packed red clay. Sorry there, little sister, over in the council house. That was not packed clay. And these are where, this is where they live. It's a very Spartan existence, as friars do in general, but you're absolutely on the frontier. You're not in the courts of Seville or something of that nature. You're absolutely on the frontier, facing life and death every single day. This must be where the head friar was. Oh, here's some kitchen action going on. So we had cooking, whatever it was we're cooking. Looks like walnuts. Nice presentation of how things were back in the day. Okay, this would have been a plaza area right through here. And I've learned from one of the docent that these buildings are reconstructed almost exactly as they were back in the day. On the exact ground, almost in a couple of degrees. Council house, the whole thing. What they really can't show you through here, through these buildings, are all the other buildings that would have been through here, all the buildings that would have been surrounding this area, all the activity that would have been taking place on a daily basis through here. And as you can maybe hear, but can't necessarily smell, there are creatures living prodigiously up here in these little raft areas. Can't tell if they're rats or squirrels. Maybe some birds. I don't know. This is an interesting reproduction. We've never seen anything quite like this with the dirt floor and that sort of thing. There's no pews. But they would have had their saints and icons. They're Catholics after all. And here is the rectory. This is where the message for the day would have been delivered. And everyone would have stood around. This is where the sacrament would have been delivered, administered. And you would have had the priest's antechambers through there. So we're gonna go back and check out the fort in that part of the mission area. The fort would have been the most important part to the Spanish because the priests were colonizing or missionizing the Indians, exposing them and bringing Christianity to them. But the basic end and aim of the Spanish government would have been to colonize this area. Oh, okay, that's why it stinks. They're bats. I couldn't get a handle on that. Oh my goodness, look at them. Oh, wow. There are hundreds of them. Oh my. Interesting. Just as it would have been back in the day. And here, where the main noise is coming from, and the main feces is looking like it's dripping down off of, is the area where you would have had